Reading this story called Rules and Laws. Can anybody make a prediction what this story might be about? As you hear during the first few seconds of this lesson, I'm introducing a grade-appropriate picture book about rules and laws to my second grade small guided reading group. One of the second grade social studies standards states that students should know the concept of government and the need for laws. My school is an IB International Baccalaureate school, and in our program, the written curriculum is arranged in themes. These themes work through our academic standards. Our current theme is about finding the connection between humans' rights and responsibilities, and rules and laws. My goal for this lesson is to build on our planner and for my students to understand what rules and laws are, why we have them, and how our life would be different without them. My ultimate goal is for my students to be able to comprehend the information about laws in the text that I read aloud to them, as well as the information from our social studies textbook. Throughout this lesson, I use various pre-reading strategies and questions to activate students' prior knowledge and prepare them to read and learn about this specific topic. I began my lesson by applying a pre-reading strategy of making predictions. This reading strategy is often used in my class to motivate and get my students excited about a book or a topic. My main purpose of the picture book was to hook and capture my students' attention. I then use a KWL chart as my main pre-reading strategy. My students have worked with this type of strategy before, but not independently, so I briefly explained to them what a KWL chart was. To motivate them further, I provided each student with a 3-section colorful paint chip sample so they can create their own KWL chart. Students who have had several experiences with KWL could devise their own KWL in small groups, in pairs, or individually. I allow my students a few minutes to write down what they know about rules and laws. Allowing my students to write on their own KWL chart gave me the opportunity to informally assess on how much they know about our topic of discussion and allowed me to notice which students did not have a schema about the topic. The easiest way to gain and hold students' interest and attention is by engaging them in intellectually rich activities that require problem-solving, critical thinking, and active participation. I then have my students share what they know about rules and laws and write it on our large KWL chart on the board so we can all share our ideas. Secondly, I hand a sticky note to each student and tell them to write the page numbers of the page that they have a question about as we do a picture walk with our book. After our picture walk is complete, I am allowing the students to write down their questions and what they want to know about our book on their own KWL chart. After a few moments, I allow volunteers to share what they want to know. As the anticipation was getting stronger for the students to start the book, I finally decided to read the book aloud. Before starting the reading, I reminded them to keep the questions that they wrote on their KWL chart in their mind as they listened to the story. After reading the story, I gave them a few moments to write down the questions that they might have about the story or rules and laws in general. Before sharing what they want to find out and writing it on the big KWL chart, I wanted to further expand their knowledge and comprehension about the topic. Comprehension is influenced by several interrelated factors, including the text itself, a reader's prior knowledge, the strategies a reader can use, and the goals and interests of the reader. I wanted my students to have the opportunity to be able to read the information from our social studies textbook, so each student had their own copy of a section from the textbook about rules and laws. Comprehension increases when reading and discussion are included in cooperative learning activities that promote engagement with new concepts and thinking aloud by students. As I allowed volunteers to read the section aloud, I also began to ask self-connecting questions during various stopping points in our reading. I believe that the thoughtful use of questions can help students understand their content area reading. Asking questions about text is perhaps the most common kind of academic work in comprehension instruction. Good questions can guide students' search for information, lead them to consider difficult ideas, and promote new insights. Furthermore, I allow my students to fill out their last section on their KWL chart, which is the What We Learned section, and they share what they each learned as I write it on our big KWL chart on the board. After that, I felt that it is very important to go back and reread the questions that we had on our KWL chart and see if we can now answer them. It was intriguing to me to hear the oohs from some of my students who had a question before reading and now the question was answered. I ended my lesson by discussing one last question, which I had the purpose to allow my students to connect to the topic or text. I asked my students how their life would be different without rules and laws in the world. Connecting any topic to a learner allows the student to think more easily and gain confidence in their answer and thinking. Overall, I believe the KWL chart helped to activate prior knowledge, track what I wanted the students to learn, and reflect on what was learned about the topic. I believe that by allowing my students to do their own KWL chart as well as do one as a whole group allowed me to model the strategy, guide my students to practice the strategy, as well as provide independent practice. Something that I would change or add the next time I do this critical teaching moment or strategy is add a few vocabulary comprehension strategies. Although this particular group was one of my higher leveled groups and did not require much vocabulary assistance, I know for other lower groups I would need to differentiate my instruction by using vocabulary activities along with the prior knowledge and comprehension strategies to increase my students' conceptual growth.